Mayor Jill Boudreau began serving as mayor on January 1st, 2012. She's committed to a municipal government that is efficient, adaptable, and dignified. She brings creative energy to City Hall and has significantly raised the level of community engagement in the city of Mount Vernon. Mayor Boudreau is a full-time city administrator responsible for 10 departments providing traditional municipal services such as public safety, public works, community development, parks, and library. The city of Mount Vernon's population is 36,000 with an annual budget of $71 million with a staff of 235 full-time employees. Mayor Boudreau's volunteer service includes the Hospice of the Northwest Foundation and Navy Marine Corps Relief Society. Please help me welcome Mayor Boudreau.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction, Andy, and I'm glad to be here today with you. It's been just about a year, and so I'm planning to just give you a quick update on what's going on with the city, but leave time for question and answer. So please think about questions you may have, and we'll just get going. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and you always hope it, comes out okay. So. Okay, if someone could let me know they see that, that would be great. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, thank you so much. All right. So before we get started, there's some folks that are on the Zoom today that I just wanted to acknowledge. So I think Councilmember Mary Hudson is on. I think I saw her name. And I apologize for any council members if I didn't see you when scrolling through all of the pages. Thanks to David as chair of the board and Andy and staff. And then we have several city staff on today, directors of departments. And so I just wanted to thank them for all their teamwork in getting us through this last year. So when I was here with you a year ago, this is one of the exact same slides that I shared. And we were looking at doing direct community support through the CARES funding, which was $200,000, which I crossed it out because there's actually more. So I'm going to cover that in a minute. The city was looking at a potential $5.35 million shortfall. And we're just really trying to navigate through the phase 2 of what was happening at the time during COVID and federal and state budgets. And so, before I go on, because I have good things I want to share, I just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge that, since this time, people that I know, and probably people that got sick, and some got seriously sick. Some are still dealing with the effects of being sick from the pandemic. And some of you probably had loved ones who passed away. And so I just wanted to just acknowledge that. We've had staff who've lost loved ones as well. And so just want to reflect on that, before we kind of launch into where we're at. So thank you for that. Last year too, these were the goals I shared with you on what we were trying to do. We were trying to maintain essential staffing levels. We were planning for that shortfall, as I mentioned. We wanted to try and continue current capital projects. Communication was a big issue that we wanted to do. And then we thought we might have to dip into our fund balance or our rainy day savings fund with the city just to keep our services going. But today, I thought I'd share, it's a little different, but not that much. I mean, we're still focused on maintaining our essential staffing levels. And David mentioned trying to hire people. The city think of it as we have 10 businesses in our departments, I guess, and trying to hire staff is something that we're facing as well. It's really hard to figure out what that's about. And I'd noticed some unemployment numbers. Fall prior pandemic, I think it was about 4.6 in Skagit County. And now we're 7% unemployed. So it's hard to figure out how we fill folks that are looking and filling those positions. So we feel you too. Right now, we're planning for not a deficit, but for the American Recovery Act. The city of Mount Vernon is receiving $9.1 million from the federal government. So we want to plan, we want to take that funding and go, okay, in a 3-year forecasted plan, what would be the needs of the city to continue serving the community, but what would the community needs be? The city's needs are focusing on technology enhancement and our fiber optic system. We have our broadband system right now that feeds mostly the commercial areas of town, but we're like, wow, okay, this brought out the light that maybe we need to look at how we would expand into residential areas. So that's something we want to take a look at. We are continuing our current capital projects, and so I'll talk about that in a minute. Our Mount Vernon Library Commons project. Communication, we felt it last year, messages coming from the federal government, from the CDC, from the state, from the governor, from like all this stuff. And it was really trying to weed through that and try and communicate just good, simple information as we move through. And as all of you know, it changed weekly, sometimes daily, sometimes monthly, but we definitely did our best. And then again, we're going to determine the use of what our rainy day fund would be as we go forward in future budgets. So our budget, speaking of, we approached this year with caution coming out of last year. Actually, our revenues were right on what we forecasted. So instead of going completely in the hole with all the extra expenses that came about during the pandemic, we actually finished the year just like kind of right on what we thought it was, which was a miracle to a lot of us. And so we thought some of the decisions we made early on layoffs, we had 17 people laid off. We made decisions to save money just like a business would. The effects of the pandemic were remedied largely with the CARES funding that was allocated from the federal government, so 1.6 million. And that's where maybe overtime came in, our PPE, things like that. Our sales tax revenues this year are actually setting records. We're going to be having our city council meeting finance committee tonight, and we're sharing with our council. We, for the first time in our history, have broken the 800,000 sales tax collection in a month. And so we don't quite understand that. It's a little surprising, I think, to us. The numbers we're looking at this month are actually from March. So that's when stimulus checks hit. So perhaps that's there. But we're looking at that. We're also, again, as I mentioned, looking at the American Recovery Act. Let's see. I try to share just a couple little bits of information about the city budget. We do have an overall over $70 million budget, but our operations, and so that's where people see our services, our library, police, our parks department. We call that our operating budget. And this year it's 36 million. It's actually about $90,000 less than 2020's budget. And 89% of our operating budget is non-discretionary. What that means is that's people paying wages, that's paying contracts. And so we don't have a whole lot to spare. If you do the math and look at 36 million, it's just not a whole lot for what we would say do extra things, which we were asked to do a lot during last year. And where does that money come from? That comes from our property tax and sales tax. So this graphic just shows the distribution of when you pay your property tax bill. It does go to, 8 taxing jurisdictions, the largest being a voted bond with school district and our schools. A large portion goes to the state of Washington, and the city of Mount Vernon receives 16 cents out of every property tax dollar for our operations. And the other larger portion that funds operations, as you may know, is sales tax distribution. And again, we out of 8.7% sales tax in the city of Mount Vernon, that's collected. The city receives 10% for operations, and we receive an extra 2%, and that's for a transportation benefit for our transportation infrastructure. And I'll talk about how we've been doing there too in just a minute. So. Going back to support to the community through the pandemic, here's where we are at the moment. So council made decisions to allocate not only CARES funding, but CDBG, which is a federal entitlement that comes to the city. Everything from motel vouchers for folks that were homeless, micro enterprise grants, direct small business grants, about 300,000 there, nonprofit, water utility, things like that. So just shy of $1 million there so far. And then we'll be bringing, again, forward needs that may be going unmet with the American Recovery Act fund that can be allocated again to go directly out to the community. Our GIS put together a restaurant map. We did help with curbside pickup parking in our downtown area. And of course, we're able to be flexible in allowing some outdoor dining. So moving on to good news, which I like to focus on because I really feel like coming out of this last year, not only could we use good news, but there is really good momentum happening that I've seen in the city, and I hope you're seeing that as well. As far as infrastructure improvements, we've had a record number of transportation grant fundings get awarded to the city, and we like to think that we're well prepared. So some of the extra funding that's come to us is because other jurisdictions weren't able to spend their grant funding on their projects. We're ready to go. We stepped in, we took advantage of that opportunity. So large construction projects like Freeway Drive expansion, so that goes along, the river and all the way up to say where Woods Coffee is and the Lowe's. That project's going to add curb gutter and sidewalks to one of the sides of the road and some bike lanes. And so that project was fully funded through grants. We also received a grant to fully fund design and construction of a light at Hogue and LaVenture, Hogue LaVenture Francis intersection, which is fantastic news. As you know, with our wonderful YMCA, there tends to be more traffic through there. So we're going to be able to move forward on that. Other things that are going on, we have record permitting levels in our development services department, Station Square, which I always had said the old Alpha redevelopment. I'll talk about that. Our Mount Vernon Library Commons project is moving forward, and I'm going to give you some examples of some downtown investment. So here's an overall picture of sort of where we're at with Station Square. And if just to orient you, this is right along the I-5 exit to the city from Kincaid Street. So it's a large 5-acre development. Right now, the 7-Eleven store is open as of today, just so that you might want to know that. And then the hospital, Skagit Regional Health, has announced, which is something we've been working on with them for a while, but they needed to announce it. So that's that a large 3-story clinic that will take pretty much that large section of the southern portion for not only the building, but for the appropriate parking. And then there's, I think, some interest in, I don't think they're in for formal permitting yet, for a restaurant and then coffee, probably a national chain of coffee going there. So far that's a $20 redevelopment investment in the city, which is a pretty big deal for us. The other exciting project is the Mount Vernon Library Commons project. I actually started speaking about this publicly to this group in 2018. We were up at Eaglemont having lunch. And so at the time, the price tag was way less, and that was several years ago. And so now we are budgeting a $45 million project. It will be, from what we can tell, the largest economic development project in the history of Skagit County. And we're 73% funded to that $45 million mark. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about what's going to be planned in this and where we're at with to finish up that final funding. So here's just a bulleted list of all the things that are going into this awesome multi-use project. So we're going to be doubling the size of our current public library and community center. We'll have that community center space for gatherings, classes, and things like that. We're going to provide equitable access to technology and computer use. And as we all know, going forward, that is everything from helping with students, helping with entrepreneurs, helping with job searches, all that kind of stuff. We're having a commercial kitchen incorporated to enable events. Our goal is to have an event that could host 200 people at a time. So you never know, the chamber might be able to meet there. This is one of the newer things. We had recognized the need coming up for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And one of the examples is the graphic on the right side, the consortium of the West Coast Electric Highway. This is between Canada and the states of Washington, Oregon, and California. With the increase in interest and manufacturing of electric vehicles, there needs to be an infrastructure. The city saw a need to say, hey, we could double the amount of electric charging vehicle stations between Vancouver, BC and Seattle with one project by adding an entire floor of accessibility to those EV charging stations. We think that's pretty exciting. The other way that we're contributing to some of the real concerns in our world right now is promoting low carbon architecture. And that comes with some really cool things called passive house design. I won't go into it, but it will lower our energy consumption in the building by 90%. That's pretty amazing. This will also catalyze private development for multifamily housing, hotel, and business. And you're saying, well, how is that? Well, when we can add 300 parking spaces to our downtown area, we can work with the hotel developer, the multifamily housing developer to decrease, if not waive altogether, parking requirements so that we're using a one central area to park And then folks maybe walk a block to the hotel. People, and that takes the funding mix out of a private, where it's a perfect mix of public-private development and helping each other out. Creating jobs is a big deal. We're looking at a significant increase for the construction of this project and model infrastructure to meet that sustainable growth in a small city. We think we can be the poster child for how we do it right in one project altogether. It's exciting. So if we get off to construction, that depends on how we're going to do with our funding. And so we've made a request to our federal government in several different avenues, several different grant programs, and we're going to be hearing from those by fall. So by the end of the year, we'll know going into next year, like what our shortfall is, and we'll look for our state to help and other ways to continue right on into construction. Construction of this project will actually yield almost $3.1 million in sales tax alone. That goes right back into our community. And I know HKP's on this. I think I saw Julie for sure on this. And so we're excited tonight. City Council will be considering adoption of a contract to award the design and engineering of our project to our local HKP firm, which I'm super thrilled about. We're not able to simply say, oh, we like this firm. They're our friends. We want to hand them this contract. That's not how government works, and it shouldn't work like that. So we went through an extensive procurement process. HKP competed with 9 other firms in a scoring process. And I like I said, I'm super excited that we get to work together here locally. So that's a $2.5 million contract. Other good news in our downtown core, and a good shout out to Ellen Gamson for all her hard work. She came forward with this idea of having a pop-up space. So the city council is renting a small space in Lincoln Block at a discounted rent for a pop-up, and sent some great news. There was folks that used the pop-up, the business called the Red Barn. And I wanted to read just a sentence of an email that they sent to Ellen, that they created a shop to bring local art and products to Skagit Valley residents and Tulip Festival tourists. This was this year. They represented 18 local artists. They grossed $16,000 in sales, 265 sales, and generated $21,000 in revenue. So kudos to folks that are out there looking at opportunity and using the advantage of a pop-up to start a new business. And even heard that one of the former tenants signed a long-term lease here in downtown because of their experience with the pop-up. So that's super awesome. And so Ellen, thank you for that work. Another good work in our downtown that you may know about or may not is our Valley Made Market. And this is Phoebe Carpenter-Ells, who's the owner of El Sage Designs in downtown. She put together this group of folks. It's kind of like a farmer's market for shop indie made small business entrepreneurs. They just have had 2 shows. So you can go on their website at valleymademarket.com to see when their next show is once a month. They had a huge success. Some of the comments that Phoebe told me was that people were blown away by the excitement of folks wanting to get out and wanting to see this happen and wanting to help spend their money. The vendors there reported breaking holiday record sales. This is a month ago. And so also Ristretto downtown said they had to staff up on those days because they didn't have enough staff. So to bring some of Infusion back to a Sunday in downtown is pretty awesome. So kudos out to all you small business owners that are thinking about these types of ideas. And then just a couple more things to update you on, and we'll do some questions. The Skagit County Permanent Supportive Housing Project. So you can actually go online and look at some of the details of this project. I've mentioned it before. We've been working on this in partnership with Skagit County and with Catholic Housing since 2017. And some of you kind of might think, well, my goodness, why does it take, say, 4 years to get a project off the ground? And a lot of it comes from the $22 million price tag, cobbling together funding to build permanent supported housing, low-income folks with no income. It is really hard, and Catholic Housing did an amazing job. They are in underwriting now, from what I understand, and so hoping to break ground this fall and open spring of 2022. And that will have 70 units of permanent supported housing for homeless, chronically homeless individuals and low-income folks right here in Skagit County, located in Mount Vernon. So back to normal. When are we going to be back to normal? We are going to aim for quasi-normal July 4th with our fireworks in Mount Vernon. So if you live in the city, you're going to get this flyer in your utility bill. You're going to get a little magazine about fireworks information. And so we are planning to have a professional firework display at Edgewater Park for the 4th of July. It will be simpler, so there's no band or food, but we are going to welcome folks into our park and along the waterfront to just maybe celebrate the upswing coming out of the pandemic. But back to normal to me also means that businesses are open, that people are feeling safe, and that we've stopped the spread of the virus. And I hope that all of you kind of share our dream and goals for that. So with that, I know I talk fast, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm hoping we can have some question and answer of things that you really want to know about. So not sure how to do the question answer.
Maybe people can put it in the chat, put the questions in the chat, and we'll both monitor it. And if they need to clarify, of course, we can have them speak up as well.
Okay, great. So I will, while we're waiting for some questions, I'll just mention, please know that you can go on the website, so mountVernonWA.gov, and we're trying to keep things updated there of, library openings. We're going to be opening city services as of July 6th. And some people might want to say, well, my goodness, you should be opening in June. Here's why we're waiting. We want all of our staff to have the opportunity to be fully vaccinated, which means 2 shots and 2 weeks after those shots. And so that's why we're targeting July 6th for that. And I think we'll be able to make that promise. Also online, you can look at our things like our preliminary budget or our budget documents. You can check out where we're at with the Commons Project or our capital projects and any other announcements there. So please make sure that you know that that's a resource, because communication is tough now, where it seems like people get information in 25 different unique ways. So.
Looks like we do have a question.
Okay.
The one I see is from David Lukoff, thanking you, of course, and then saying, are you and the City Council working on ways to promote investment in middle-class housing?
Yes.
In Mount Vernon?
Yes, thank you. So the City Council and staff, we have goals that are set out in our comprehensive plan housing adopted document. And so if you're interested in that document, that's also on our website, so you can see. And so the things that have been accomplished over the last few years are codes around, density bonuses. So if developers are building a project and they are willing to add percentages of units that are under what's called 80% of the area median income. So 80% AMI, which is what is considered affordable, according to the state. If they're willing to add units in there that are permanently protected to that standard, that they can add more units in their project than normal. So that's called density bonuses. They've also been able to do things like using areas to do infill projects. So I really feel like that's the area we're going to make a good progress in adding more units in this particular category, is by taking maybe existing neighborhoods, being able to take one lot, subdivide it, have a second home, small home built on it, whether that's what's called an accessory dwelling unit. We have very progressive codes on that already. So I think the codes around what we've been able to do have helped. One last code we're working on is to be able to put a duplex or a townhouse 2-unit on any single family residential lot in the city. So that's something that's coming toward council now. So I'm hoping that that answers a little bit about some of the codes that the council has promoted. One thing that we really hope happens is once we can break ground on the Commons Project and have that public amenity coming, then downtown, we actually have unlimited density. We have different parking requirements in our downtown area, which we would like to see those multi-story apartment units just because of the location. So, let's see. Oh, where will the new library be located? Sorry about that. I didn't say that. So that is right across from the Skagit County Superior Court which is on Kincaid. And if you can think about it for a minute, you'll realize it's a surface parking, so just a flat parking lot right now. And that's where the project will be.
Mayor Boudreau, I'll throw in a question staying on the housing piece of it and or development, I guess. And it's a little wonky, so bear with me. But under GMA, the city has areas that you could expand into. I think they're residential reserves.
Yes.
What triggers that, and could you see that happening? And is it needed?
Okay, thank you. So this is for the nerdy people in the group, because I love you and I love being able to just explain sort of this policy framework. So the GMA is the Growth Management Act. It is a state law that was passed back, I think it was 91. And what it did was basically say, do we want sprawl and growth everywhere? Or do we want to consolidate population growth into cities? That's because that's where the infrastructure is. That's where the sewer lines are. That's where all that is, the services happen. So this is part of the Growth Management Act, is to contain sprawl in our state. Every jurisdiction, including cities and towns, provide a plan built from the ground up. It's a 20-year outlook of how you're going to accommodate in your jurisdiction population growth. And you have to plan for the people that are coming in housing. But when people are coming, where are they going to work? So you have to plan for jobs, and you have to plan for the infrastructure. You have to say, do you have enough sewer capacity to handle the growth that you think you're going to have? So to me, it makes tons of sense to plan like this. I hope it makes sense to you. So when the Growth Management Act, you have to, it's data driven, and it's based on actual research and data. So for instance, if we say we're going to accept 5,000 new people coming to the city, just theoretical number, over the next 20 years, do we have enough housing and where can we put it? So we do a buildable lands analysis. We actually look at every single piece of property in the city of Mount Vernon and see what the zoning is and what could be built there. So we do a land calculation on, can we accommodate housing units and commercial areas for jobs. So where it comes into play is, if our calculations say we cannot fit that number of people, that number of housing units, that number of commercial jobs in our city, we can grow into what's called an urban growth area, which is what Andy mentioned, in order to accommodate what those needs are. Now, we have to prove it to the state, because they have to approve this. We have to prove that we can't fit those needs in the city before it's allowed to happen. At this time, and you can read it for yourself online with our comp plan, we do not show the need to expand into the urban growth areas at this time. So hopefully that helps.
Very much. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. For the library, what ideas does the city have for the 30% funding need? So we're looking at about a $10 million shortfall at the moment. So we have been shortlisted on Congresswoman Del Bene's list for, basically it's called an earmark. I think they're calling it something else now, for $2.5 million. We're shortlisted for that out of all the competition. So we're excited. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but we're excited. We've also put in for Senator Maureen Cantwell's office for the same type of dollar amount through the Senate side of the federal government. And because we're incorporating electric charging vehicles, and because we're 400 feet from Skagit Station, we can now compete for transportation funding. And there's a lot of transportation funding coming out of the federal government, and I believe there's more. And so we're pretty optimistic that we can figure out a good portion of that 10 million from the federal transportation funding. The other thing is, what we're excited about is our 40th and 10th legislative district representatives in the state have been amazingly supportive on this. So we think that if we can come close to that 10 million, we'll be going back to our state government and looking for some help there to complete it, to get to that construction window. So yeah, I'm super optimistic. But one thing that I'd love to be able to point out is we are working so that, and I said this in 2018, that we want to build this project for the benefit of our community without added burden of tax dollars on you, property tax or sales tax. And that's we're on track to meeting that promise and that goal. And we'll keep updating you as we get closer. Has PSC been involved in the commercial kitchen EV chargers? Well, Scott, thank you for that question. I have spoken with Robert. We had a meeting about that. He's setting up another meeting as we move forward because we think that there's some really good partnerships with PSC, and we'll be looking for that for sure. And let's see. How are you making up the loss of the parking spaces? So the current parking count on the lot where we're going to build is 81. And the structure will have a projected 300 spaces there. So I'm hoping that helps with that. If you're thinking about construction, what are we doing for parking during construction? We actually have a plan. We worked that out with Skagit County, so we have it mapped. And we believe that we can accommodate that parking need while we're under construction, literally within 3 blocks of the courthouse. So that's that. I don't know if I missed any.
There was one about adding free spaces if there will be density building projects happening in residential areas. I'm not sure I totally understand that.
Okay, it may be where, because the density bonus is for affordable housing units. And yes, it can be done in residential areas. It would be so 2 ways. It would be done in what we call multifamily construction. That's where maybe you've got 6, 8, 10, 12 units or whatever. But it could also be done in single family residential if you're adding what's called an accessory dwelling unit. So like a little mother-in-law apartment, maybe that's people kind of know what that means. You know, you could do, I think, up to a 900 square foot ADU in a single family lot, if that helps.
Mayor, what would happen to the old library?
Yeah, so we want to snug up the government campus. We don't need to be as sprawled out as we need to be. So we are hoping to do a little remodel. We'll bring our information or IT department into that space. Right now, they're literally working out of a closet, or one of them is working out of a closet at City Hall. And then we want to bring our public works staff, because they're in a separate building, the administrative engineers into that space. And then we would more than likely surplus the public works building after that. Those are council decisions. But the idea is to snug up the campus and reuse that space. The permanent, I was bad on telling you locations. I'm sorry. The permanent supported housing project is being built on College Way. It is a really skinny, kind of long, narrow property that was for sale for, I think, like 10 years. And it's borders Hawthorne Funeral Home and like the Worksource building, little Japanese restaurant there. It's like super long and narrow. And that's where that's going. Okay. Do you see any other questions, Andy?
I don't know if you covered this.
Okay.
Are you making up for the loss of parking spaces? I'm not sure that, I think net there'll be quite a bit more, won't there?
Yes. Yeah. Net there will be.
In the downtown, I think is the question.
Okay.
I mean, the parking structure will add a lot of parking.
Correct. Yeah. It would, if you, on top of my head, maybe 210 spaces netted from that project. So hopefully that was right. Okay, let's see. Conservation has 0% current funding. Okay, maybe that's the property tax. Let me pull that back. Oh, conservation futures. Oh, that's probably because it's so small. It's less than 1%. So that might have been. So I apologize for saying they don't get any money, but they do take a portion of the tax from property tax. And that comes from through Skagit County. I believe it's the commissioner's decision. I'm going to pull that back in case I'm wrong, but that comes through a county government action. Okay. Any plans for the old Skagit Publishing Building on College Way? To my knowledge, we have not had anyone come in and talk about redoing that downstairs. Sometimes I believe the owners live outside of the state, if I'm not mistaken, because we contact them frequently about code enforcement issues and how the building looks. And I think we should keep on them to make it not look like it does. But what we do is, if there is folks that are looking at properties or they're interested in redeveloping, we're always happy to talk through, what they can do there, what the zoning is, give information and help any prospective investor along on things that they'd like to do in the city. We're super happy to meet with folks at any time. Okay. I don't know if I see any other questions.
I don't think I do either.
Okay, so I guess I'll just wrap up by saying, thank you again so much. We're trying to keep communication out. There's a mayor's e-newsletter that's going out once a month. Please sign up for that. If you have a question, please call at any time. We're a small community where we shop local. We can ask questions. We can get questions answered, and so we appreciate any contact that you have coming our way. So, and thanks for all the hard work all of you did over the last year and a half. I don't think we're out of the woods completely, but we're excited. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Thanks for your leadership. Thanks for the rallying cry, back to normal. I like it. Let's all do what we need to do to get there, because the vaccination rate, it could happen even if the vaccination rate speeds up, we could start the back to normal a little sooner. But anyway, so
exactly.
Thank you so much. Fabulous presentation.